Hey everybody, welcome back to Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl. I'm Carl Raven.
I'm Tiff Salcido,
And
and
joining
that's
us today,
Julie.
is our good friend and amazing person, Miss Julie Fong. She's a social service and public policy leader with more than 28 years experience working in state, territory, and tribal governments and social services, government relations, public policy, and social justice. She brings nearly 25 years experience with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Agency through the Administration for Children and Families, first as a Tribal TANF program specialist, and later as the Region 9 TANF program manager, overseeing more than 30 programs with funding exceeding $4.3 billion. And now she runs her own program with California Department of Social Services that is worth $4.3 billion. I'm just kidding. But so we're so glad to have you with us today, Julie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And a point of clarification, I don't run the program. I work on a little tiny aspect of it now.
Yeah.
Whereas before I worked on it like from a 30,000 foot view, I work on this little tiny policy aspect of it now. So yeah.
Great. So just tell us about your journey and where you came from and working with in Health and Human Services and ACF and working with tribes to where you are now and what has that brought you?
Sure. Uh, it's been a long journey. It's been an eventful journey and one that I could not have predicted. So I'm a social worker. I have a master's in social work, and my values and orientation to the world and to human beings is all kind of aligned with that, with being of service and working for folks that don't have a voice. I started out in civil rights. That was actually my first job with the federal government. I worked for Department of Justice and did civil rights mediation and conciliation in communities that were impacted by large scale civil rights conflicts. So I did things like monitoring KKK rallies to ensure that the folks that showed up to protest, and that they were always a larger group than the KKK members, that they were safe and that no one's civil rights were violated. Um, I mediated large scale community wide conflicts related to race. So oftentimes that was related to police overreach or police brutality
Mhm.
in communities of color. And then I went into private sector for a very brief moment, and then I went back to civil rights, working with LA County Commission on Human Relations, and I worked on hate crimes there. And then I found myself with the Administration for Children and Families in San Francisco. And I started there as a program specialist. I was hired to work exclusively with tribal governments on their tribal TANF programs and their tribal child care programs. So for the first almost 12 years of my career with ACF, I worked only with tribal governments, which was work that I loved. It was work that that was really fulfilling. It felt very just. It was fascinating. I was hired in 2001, and uh, the tribes had been given the authority to operate their own temporary assistance to needy family programs under PERORA, the 1996 welfare reform law. And so they were just newly standing up these programs. They were in kind of their little out of infancy, but like in their toddler stage of program development. And tribes had never operated welfare programs, or administered welfare programs, so they didn't have the frame of reference that states do, right, and did. And so they kind of had to build from scratch. And I got to work in partnership with tribes in California, Nevada, and Arizona in building those programs from the ground up.
Very cool.
Was very cool. So now I am with I served as a program specialist and then was eventually promoted to regional program manager for the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families program, and um, had a team of 4 who worked on both tribal temporary assistance to needy families programs and state and territory TANF programs. So we worked with Arizona, California, Nevada, Guam, and Hawaii, and then with about 75 tribal governments
Hmm.
in the administration of their programs. And I did that for 12 or 13 years until I was summarily doged on April Fool's Day, 2025. I received an email thanking me for my service and inviting me to clean out my office and exit the building in 30 minutes. So that was, that was a shocking and abrupt end to a almost 26-year career with the federal government. And I have had the extreme good fortune um, becoming employed with the California Department of Social Services in the CalWorks division. And I currently work under the leadership of Octavio Galvan, who's the bureau chief. And I serve as a section chief working on eligibility policy, which is a really different view of the TANF program and a really different view of a very different kind of bureaucracy than the federal government.
Julie, I'm exhausted that you have done. You have done so many amazing things. Like I literally feel like I just watched like 10 episodes of a really great series, you know? Like you've done so many amazing things that I think many people would only have like a once in a lifetime opportunity to do. And that is just, I'm fangirling so hard right now, you don't even know. Like I had
Thank
no
you.
idea. Like
I feel like Forrest Gump. I say that, and in that I have been really fortunate to find myself. I mean, not that I haven't worked hard, right?
right,
But
right.
I have, the doors have opened and I have been able just to step through and say, okay, what like um I've just felt very, very fortunate in the doors that have opened and the opportunities that have presented themselves for me to say yes to. Um, and with in working with the tribes and all of the experiences there in the civil rights
Mhm.
space, and which was very unique, and especially in the time period I worked in civil rights, very unique. And there a lot of awareness, kind of burgeoning awareness, like new awareness, and then being able to continue on a continuum this work on a program I feel really strongly about. I feel very passionate about it. I feel very passionate about the families that we serve. To be able to go from kind of this 30,000-foot view and to a view that where I'm um, not quite in the weeds with it, but I'm definitely much closer to it than I was. So it's been, yeah, I feel really lucky, very
Mhm.
fortunate.
Well, and
I think
yeah,
go ahead,
go
Carl.
ahead, Jeff. No, go
No,
ahead,
I
Jeff.
just
Go.
to say that the thing that like really like I do agree it's very Forrest Gumpy. I think that's a very perfect analogy for like you're in all of these different really great spaces, but I think the common thread between all of them is that you have worked consistently for like the equity and opportunity for all people, and really trying to lift up some of these marginalized communities and places where people have been ignored or um, kind of put to the side, or at least not had the same voice that is needed at a really high level. And I think that's what really sticks with me and is incredibly inspiring, because
Yeah.
I see it at a very low level. I'm looking at an individual micro level. How do I make each person I come in contact with feel worthy and valued? But I see you moving and shaking in these huge systems that oftentimes are very oppressive to the people who need them the most. And
Mhm.
you kind of dismantling that one small piece at a time. And so it's very awe-inspiring, to be very honest with you. I'm not just trying to blow your head up. I really do believe that without people like you at a very micro or macro level, really kind of fighting and navigating through some of these very complicated systems, incredibly complicated systems, none of us at the bottom ever have a chance if we don't have people like you see, now I can't say the words, Carl, championing for those who maybe don't have the power or influence to be able to navigate those situations on their own. So I just really love that. Very inspiring.
Thank you. I we all, whether or not we know it, I think we all hop from the macro to the micro every day. And I wear a piece of jewelry on like quotes and words and things that kind of prompts that remind me. And I wear a piece of jewelry that is a quote that we can do no great things, only small things with great love.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we hop from the individual to the macro every day and over the continuum of our lives, whether or not we're conscious of that. Um, and and sometimes at the macro level, we we were you don't see the details you need to see at 30,000 feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily result in changes that are helpful to people. And so I go back and forth in my mind a lot when I am doing um, and over the continuum of my career in the work that I'm doing in checking myself and my perspective because we really need to build those chutes and ladders between that 30,000 foot
Yeah.
level and what's happening in the interpersonal and the one-on-one in the
Right.
communities. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to ask you about, because you know, Tiff and I, we both came up through social work as well, right? And so we both worked in counties, before our journeys got there. And so having, that experience and your education, as a social worker, and having your values being in social work and social justice and helping others, how's that translated in your career and in your leadership style where you've administered a program, and even now in terms of that idea of how you are focusing on that, I mean, even macro to the micro, but just even working for the Department of Social Services, you're still kind of at maybe not the 1,000 foot view but maybe the 100 foot view, right? So how have you been able to translate your values as a social worker into some of those jobs that are were are so meaningful in term for so many other people.
That's a big question to unpack, but I start with um and this is kind of an illustration of what I meant by I think every day we go between the micro and the macro. So, a lot of folks who work particularly in TANF, but in human services, right, um, they're mission driven, and they're often mission driven by their values and their personal values and their personal principles. They're driven by um, personal experience in their lives, right? And a desire to affect change and to um, contribute to social justice and to systems change. And I love that about the field. And it's something, it's the place that kind of where I start with in the work that I do and in the leadership I provide. I start with the individuals I work with and learning about what drives them and what informs their lens and what they have, the barriers they have overcome and what they struggled with, and because that all informs um, what they bring to the table and their perspective, which in turn can inform the way that policy is interpreted, and the way that policy is implemented, or the way that is designed, a program is designed, or service is designed. And so that is even at the 30,000 foot level, I always come back to my interpersonal training. I start there. What's for you? Where did you come from? How does that inform your worldview and your lens? How does that inform what you need? How does that inform um, how I engage with you so that we can build a bridge of partnership? And then I grow it from there. I take that same approach as I escalate from the micro to the macro in both my work relationships, in the way that I the work that I do. I use that same sort of structure to do self-reflective practice in the macro work. Like, why am I seeing this way? What how does someone else see it? How much of me is informing this policy proposal, or this interpretation, or this write-up, or this report, or the way that I'm approaching, and where do I need to check that? Where do I need to what what factual things do I need to go to ensure that I am that my lens is not informing this in a way that's not appropriate or effective. So I use that back and forth a lot. I
I
don't know if
think
that
that
makes sense.
it makes perfect sense. And I think that I'm noticing that is really kind of shaping the way that programs roll out. Specific, I'm thinking of like CalWorks and family focused programs. We're starting to see again at a delivery where there's a lot more flexibility and ability to meet people where they're at and to be able to partner with people and have that human to human
Yes.
connection, or as I like to say, the neighbors helping neighbors kind of mindset, because we're not so restricted by um, these rules and regulations that really are compliance. Everybody fits in a box and must do it this way or else. That kind of shaking the fist, which has been a reality for many years. And so, like, I'm incredibly inspired by that, and I agree with you. Where, like, I think many of the people who are on the ground front lines doing this work, um, social workers, eligibility workers, employment counselors, etc., the ones who are really in the trenches with the family. And I'm saying in the trenches because it really is a war on poverty and
Yeah.
these things that are happening. Um, a lot of times, the message that they're getting conflicting messages of
Yes.
take care of the people because they're your neighbors, as long as you do it in 15 minutes or less, as
Yes.
long as you make sure all these forms get completed, as long as we meet these measures so that we can maintain our funding, which I know that both are important. But I think this is why I'm also super excited about this whole idea of how we're transforming CalWorks into something that is more focused on families and the everyday in the big 30,000 view of the whole goal is to make people's lives better. And so how do we
Absolutely.
design those systems to allow people to help people make their lives better versus the other way
Absolutely.
around? So
Yeah, I
your
think,
strategy is working. Your strategy is working.
well, I've only been there a year, and like I said, I just work on this little tiny part of it, but I think that um, that my definitely my mindset is there's a collective consciousness that shares my mindset for sure. And I think for too long we let the tail wag the dog, right? We let um uh the form define the function and what things look like rather than um uh the participant, the families, the communities inform what that should look like. We don't want the structure, the bureaucratic structure to be the thing that's informing what we're doing. It's not going to work. It's not going to be effective. And I think that uh, it's interesting to me that at the county level,
Mhm.
I think this is fairly new. Um, eligibility workers, caseworkers are receive the kinds of supports that professional social workers receive.
Mhm.
They were not professionalized roles. They were more kind of like administrative roles. These are the people that are the front line meeting with families in crisis. They're the first engagement, and they're not supported or equipped to do that in an effective way. I've been waiting for the day that happens, where we start to acknowledge these are roles that should be professionalized in the same way as social workers professionalized. And that means there are values that drive your job. There are principles that drive your job and how you conduct your job. And there are also values and principles that drive how you're doing that and how you are fostered and facilitated in doing that and how you're trained in doing that in an ongoing way. And so I'm really pleased to observe that this is changing, right? That there is significant change at the service provision level and awareness and the things that, in my perspective, humble perspective, should have been driving how these programs operate, how these services are provided, how families are engaged. These things, these values and principles that should have always been there are now being implemented and practiced. So
And, and that's something, I mean, Tiff and I work with at the county level with eligibility workers 50 to 100 times a year, right? So, if not more, right? And so, just having that understanding of the idea of professionalization, right? And these folks, they are in roles where they have a direct impact on the outcomes of those families, right? Just even with the idea of an intake worker being trauma informed, right?
yes,
Um,
yes,
you know,
yes,
and the understandings of that a SAR 7 may not be the easiest thing, a semi-annual report may not be the easiest thing for someone who has a lower reading level to be able to support, right?
or
Or
just the use of acronyms. So when I started, I have a master's degree, and I am accustomed to bureaucratic writing, bureaucratic regulation, statute, legalese, uh, the acronyms and the use of acronyms uh, in the it's like an entire language. And a family comes in crisis and you're using acronyms, and maybe they can't read, maybe they can only read at a sixth grade level, maybe they have a master's degree, but the bottom line is it's still an entirely new language to someone who doesn't live there and use that language anyway.
yeah,
Like, let's
yeah,
make this accessible by using plain English.
I'd say I was looking at
Mhm.
an application from Department of Governmental Services for a small business certification, and I saw the paper version, and I'm just like, I have a PhD.
Yeah,
Why am I so confused right now? Why? And
yes.
it had nothing. I'm sure it was written exactly. And when I went online, the questions it asked were completely um, uh, intuitive, and it made the process so much easier. But probably in my head, I'm like, I have to fill this out. I got to write this out. Does it take, Adobe Power, PDF, and who do I have to send this, and all these other things that filled my head with stress and anxiety. And this is somebody who, has a job and has many jobs
Right.
and has a
Right.
career, let alone
Yeah.
somebody who has three kids and just broke up with their significant other, or, the significant other, whatever happened to them, and they're trying to figure things out on their own, and they got a month to leave their parents' house. And yet we want to inundate them with all this legalese and these acronyms and this straightforward, like I said, lack of understanding of trauma and crisis. And it can really be hard, not just on the client,
Mm.
but on the worker themselves, right?
Yes. They need
That's,
supports.
yes,
You don't
absolutely.
interface with someone's trauma every day and not have it impact you. That doesn't, not if you're a human being, it doesn't
Yeah,
happen. So,
yeah,
social workers, psychologists, when you do clinical work, you have something called clinical supervision, and that is an opportunity to take care of yourself,
yeah,
to ensure that the services you're providing are informed by the client, that you're not um, reflecting your own past or issues on that, right, on that client's treatment, but also that you are receiving the support you need to remain an objective but caring, compassionate professional. And intake workers don't get that. They don't get that kind of support. I don't know that eligibility workers, right? They and that's ongoing. That's an ongoing support. It's ongoing training. It's ongoing facilitation of checking with a person. And I think oftentimes in those types of roles, folks, they do what they do and they're not necessarily cognizant of the impact.
yeah.
No,
But there's an impact. Then they may go home and drink 12 White Claws and wonder why they need to drink 12 White Claws, or
Yeah.
yeah, whatever.
or a sun cruiser, which we were
Sun
just
Cruiser, there it is, right?
no,
Take it back.
but I agree with you so much, and I think that's like one of the things I really like am hoping to help shift from my perspective. My little area of influence that I have is that um you notice the difference in an eligibility worker or a social worker who's brand new versus like 5 years in. You see the
Yes.
shift. I always say when they're new,
Yes.
they're all glitterific and they're so mission driven and they can't wait to
Yes.
change the world. And I love that energy. And then one of us comes in who's been there for a while and we're like, come here, little one. Let me tell you how it really is. You're being
Yeah.
way too helpful, way too optimistic. Who do you think you are bringing all this joy and hope to our workplace?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, like where I'm hoping, again, I love seeing at a legislative level where things are starting to shift in terms of like expectations and measurements. I think that's a huge piece of it. What my biggest fear is, it's going to take way too much time to trickle down to the people who are actually doing the work. And so, um, I'm doing everything I can to get that message out. Like we have to be able to take care of ourselves. I absolutely know that right now most counties are short staffed. I know most lobbies are busier than they ever have been. We're seeing like a decrease in resources, et cetera, et cetera. There's all of this noise at a federal level about our programs. And how do we really kind of navigate in this reality, knowing that we are going to take care of the people because we have to, because that's our role. But how do we also take care of each other and have, whether it be training, support, even just as an individual checking in and say, Julie, that was a rough call that you just got off of. Do you want to go take a quick walk? And then having that permission to go take that walk with a coworker without, hey, you are away from your desk for 5 minutes. If you don't have anything to do, I've got another spreadsheet for you to complete. Because I think in my own experience, where most people lose their compassion is that they're giving it all away and they're getting none in return. The system is not compassionate to their struggle. And I think that that, like, I'm almost tearing up because that to me is the saddest thing, is that
It's,
we
it
hire the
is.
right people and then we mold them, or the environment molds them into something they don't even recognize, and we just say they're just not motivated enough, and I don't think that's fair.
I agree. I had a mentor who actually worked both at the state and then came over to the Fed. And she used to tell me, um, she was about 20 years older than me. She used to tell me, Julie, bureaucracies eat their young. And that is what you just described.
Mm-hmm.
And and in order for that not to happen, there has to be intentionality. There has to be acknowledgement of it first and intentionality. And that is, I think the ebb and flow that we all struggle with in either at the state level, at the county level, is the balance between um, the interpersonal and the psychological safety and the people, right? And supporting our people, developing our people, and kind of the endless flow of work and spreadsheets and policy and bills and legislation and all of those things, right? How do you balance that? And that it's a tension that's challenging to navigate, but it has to be navigated if we are not going to, if we're going to be successful. Otherwise, it's just a Sisyphean exercise of pushing the boulder up the hill and having it roll back and pushing it back and having it roll back. And I think there there has been huge advancement, and the noise will always be there. Whether we have the insanity of, in my humble opinion, the current federal administration,
Yeah.
or something. But the noise will always be there, the legislation noise, and it starts with acknowledging it's all there, and it starts with providing the supports to folks and the development, um, professional development, and the guidance, and making intentional space for those things,
Yeah.
because that's the only way that we have capacity to deal with the endless flow of work. We've got to come back to that again and again and remind ourselves, because it's easy to go into, we call it machine mode, right? It's really easy to go into machine mode. It's like, get things done, get things done. And at the end of the day, that is not going to result in the best work product or the best service to a client or the best policy decision. That it's just not. It'll get it done, but
At what cost? You know,
that's right. That's right.
at what cost? No,
Yeah.
I
And
agree.
don't get me
Julie,
started on legislation. I just we need to be building bridges between legislators need to be in county offices and need to be with families to meet with the state and understand what the policies are before they start proposing these pieces of legislation that, wait, do you really understand? Do you really understand what this program does? What it's intended to do? What the needs are, right? Anyway,
or just even the people who are they're servicing, like like SNAP, it's a
yeah,
food stamps,
yeah,
right? I mean, we're seeing all this, this work mandate when the majority of people on food stamps were working anyway,
yeah,
right? And
yes, yes,
people in
yes.
places like Iowa that you can only buy, organic or whole foods with your food stamps, which makes your food stamps, go way less, right? And so it's just which encourages, abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse, right? So it's don't get me on my soapbox, yeah,
I'm all,
but
I'm just, yeah, I would say my senators and my reps hate to see my name in an email because I have something I'm mad about at least once a week. And that's the only way I feel powerful. It's like, you know what, I've been thinking about this. Let me help them make some informed decisions. I got some things on my mind. Yeah.
but and
That's the you just made uh illustrated kind of that between the micro and the macro over and over and over again, right? between that is what it is. We have to walk that bridge over and over, build those bridges
Mhm.
between the micro and the macro. Because the we only have control over what we have control over. And that's another thing. I think that let's start where we have control and then let's move from there because you can bridge from there.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I get, and I wanted to ask you, in terms of talk about the macro view, and the further you go up, the less connection you have with the end user per se in any way, right? And the further you go up the chain, and we talk about that all the time. And in like Cat's diagram, you're more strategic and less technical, and what those things like that. So when you are in a position like a program administrator, or it's somebody in Congress who maybe does not have that regular visceral connection, not just the information, right? But the visceral connection, not the hard data, but the soft data, right? In terms of how people are, not how are they using it, but what is the impact on them? What advice do you have for people in those roles that maybe do not have the lived experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the regular access to information that would help them to have the power of perspective in terms of the programs that they serve, provide for other people.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but that is again uh, the be intentional to go between the micro and the macro. Understand that they are not mutually exclusive. They are a continuum. In order for policy to mean anything, it has to be relevant to practice. And practice has to be relevant to the need. And the need has to be defined by the family or the community, right? So the advice I would give someone at that 30,000 foot level is um, how are you connecting to developing an awareness and maintaining awareness of what's happening at the service level and how that requires intentionality. It requires intentionality when you are working in a county office with eligibility workers. There's intentionality at the eligibility worker level, right? And ensuring that they don't get burned out and and ensuring that the internal systems that you have to support them and to train them and to foster their work are there, and to ensure that those systems align with other systems where health and human services operate well, and so on and so forth. Right? So it's about understanding that all of those are intrinsically linked and being intentional about participating and being aware, maintaining awareness of those links and how what you might do in this little tiny corner is going to impact the next level and the next level, and maintaining that awareness. One thing that I was, again, Forrest Gump, really lucky, but one of the ways that I maintained my um, awareness at a micro level was through our work with tribes. So we partner very closely with tribes, and that meant um, talking with them a lot, going on site and doing site visits and meeting families that were being served, learning about the program, hearing stories. We had regular check-ins with our tribal partners, and meeting with program managers and directors and service providers, to hear about their success stories or their challenges, help them with their challenges through policy lens, through a practice lens, through um, a best practice. I'd have some resources is what another tribe had success with, but that really helped us to maintain that awareness every day, because there are far fewer layers of bureaucracy in tribal TANF programs, and So we were able to connect with tribes and to via our connection with and partnership with the folks that were doing the programs and the services, we connected with the community and the families as well.
So are you
So any
recommending?
opportunity, yeah, yeah.
I would say, are
I'm
you
sorry.
recommending that we openly communicate with each other? Because that's what I'm hearing is that we actually have, real, honest, meaningful conversations regularly.
Yes, yes.
I'm in. Count me in. Got my
And
vote.
really intentional about it.
Right.
Really intentional about it. Yeah, yeah.
I know we said we wouldn't keep you long, but this is spurring a conversation with me. One of the biggest things that I've seen in my experience in my career is silos. And it's one of the biggest conversations that I hear on a regular basis. And I mean, it can just even on the Cal work side, it could be eligibility versus welfare to work, right? But especially eligibility and child welfare. And so you have had that macro experience of being in Tribal TANF and maybe with ICWA. How did you all, get through that silo, or was that a challenge? How did you manage that challenge? How was that something that was successful and that where maybe other departments can maybe take some lessons?
So, I mean, it was a constant exercise. Um, but the first thing was intentionality. First of all, acknowledgement and awareness, right? We got to acknowledge what's happening here. And we have to be intentional if we want to ensure that folks are not going to be stuck in a silo or stuck with blinders. Um, and so that intentionality was we did things like we created cross division work groups to work on a shared intersectional issue or policy. And then we brought in stakeholders, if there were stakeholders at various levels to engage and inform. But that was a constant exercise in how do we build the shoes and ladders to connect the various silos, and how do we build mechanisms to ensure that we are meeting and talking, communicating and sharing and maintaining awareness and keeping one another informed. Those are the very basic things that need to be in place, the mechanisms to be in place in order to fact change. And change will, you don't change a bureaucracy, you don't turn a huge ship quickly. You turn it very slowly, right? And in increments. But you first gotta, get on the ship, figure out like what you need to turn it, make sure all those things are there. You've got people, somebody on the bow, somebody on the back, people on the sides helping you to sight. And that's all very intentional. It's intentional teamwork, it's intentional communication, and and that you go from there to build the systems pieces that will help you maintain those I like to think that of them as kind of little pathways between the silos, right?
Mhm.
Now I'll have you know
I don't
that
know if
the
that answers your
ships.
question, but
No, perfect, perfect. No, that was exactly. And I'll have you know that the ships reference. I didn't know anything about that until I started watching Below Deck, and now I know all of that you're talking about, and who is making sure we park the boat correctly. So I appreciate that. But no, it's such a huge thing with that we hear all the time with silos and people protecting their turf. And when I
yes,
and folks, when I
yes.
say ICWA is Indian Child Welfare, TANF is pretty much like CalWorks or welfare to work and eligibility for tribes. So it's the eligibility side versus child welfare. Same with if you have a CalWorks department for your county and CPS, right? So how do we bridge those gaps? I'm teaching a class right now. I'm working with folks from a county where we're talking about, all the new Title 4E money that is being given out to communities to be able to help um, families so that they don't get to the point where they have to engage with CPS. And it's just a huge thing for people who have never walked through the door to their CalWorks department or crossed the parking lot to the CalWorks building to talk to somebody about, hey, what resources do you have that actually could benefit our families, and vice versa. I mean, if
Yeah,
we didn't
I am.
go over to child welfare either, and so and a lot of that is because you're told there's this invisible barrier, and so working through that, like you said, intentionally breaking through that barrier, connecting with people on that human level, not program level, human level. It's not the hard skills. I don't have to know all your acronyms or all your
Yes,
forms. I don't
yes.
have to know what CANS is. I don't have to know what CalWorks stands for. I just have to know who you're working with, and do we have something that could benefit them in that real functional, impactful way. But we have to get out of our own ways. And it's such
Yes,
an
we do have
important
to
thing.
get out of our own way. That's right. We do. And it's about relationship at the end of the day, which again is the micro, right?
Yeah.
It's about relationship. It's about being intentional about developing relationship. It's about being intentional about, I mean, ICWA, they, there are still counties that in terms of ICWA and Tribal TANF that still do not have they don't have an awareness ICWA.
No.
They do not
Yeah.
have procedures around ICWA.
Yeah.
They have to be policed by tribes, and there are tribes who don't have ICWA programs, right, or the mechanisms in place to ensure that tribal children who are in the child welfare system that their ICWA rights are fostered and facilitated. And
Yeah.
so again, building those connections, and
Yeah.
those are built through relationship.
And that
They are
they're
built
equal
through
partners,
intentionality.
that
Yeah,
they're equal
yeah,
partners to the county. They're sovereign
yes,
nations. They have just as
yes,
much standing in a court of law as the
exactly,
county does. And how
exactly.
many people don't
There's
recognize?
an absence of
Yeah.
tribes
Yeah.
or cities, right?
Yeah.
They have equal standing to a county, and they are a government. I think there's even, I mean, there's an absence of understanding. Many people think that um, tribal is a cultural or even a racial term or concept, and it's a political identity, right? And folks aren't even aware of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's about awareness, intentionality, communication, and understanding the bigger context. What is that bigger context, and what are all of the people and the intersections in that larger context?
Yeah. I just I want us to get to a space where we are a we. I say this ridiculously all the time,
Mhm.
where it's not about you or and them and us or them or the feds versus the state versus the it's how about we act like a we are
Mhm.
all invested in the same thing, like what's in our collective best interest and how do I make us more of a we and less about me. And I think like the intentionality, I know you've used that word a lot, which I'm really loving because you have to fight against individually your ego and like the need to be right or the most correct or the whatever and really start thinking collectively of like what's in the best interest of we, and then I'll do that.
I love that. I love that so much. There's an African proverb, there is no me without you, right? And that is absolutely what you just illustrated. And again, it comes down to awareness and being willing to get out of your own way.
Yeah.
And I think something that I with many of the teams, something that I try to practice with many of the teams I've led is to illustrate that conflict is not a bad thing. Conflict is a pathway to understanding. And I'm really working to change some minds in my new role around that, because for most people, conflict, when they hear the word, they have they conjure a certain idea about what that means, and it's very negative, that, right? And I think it really serves as a barrier to teams and organizations and programs breaking through and to new ideas and new approaches and new ways of doing things, and positivity, and to shared understanding, and to resolution. And so that's something that I really will continue to emphasize and work on changing minds around, that conflict is a path to understanding and to change. I think it's a good thing.
I agree with you. You're preaching to
Julie,
the choir here, sis.
Julie, where can we find you? Or what ways can people who want to connect with you and interact with you on some of these big concepts, and utilize your expertise? Is there any way people can connect with you?
Probably the best way would be LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I think my LinkedIn's just under, I haven't used it in a minute. I'm on and off
It's
of it.
Julie Fong
But I think,
MSW, isn't it?
yeah,
It's Julie
I
Fong
think it's
MSW?
Julie Fong, MSW.
Yeah.
And
I'm updating that right now.
I did
yeah,
that. I did that without having to look it up, Tiff.
Oh, good
I knew
job.
it
thank
in my
you.
head.
Thank you. It is Julie Fong, MSW. Um, and my employment affiliation is California Department of Social Services. And folks are absolutely welcome to reach out to me anytime.
Well,
I love it.
thank you so much for being here with us. And gosh,
I
now
was
we're
glad.
inspired. And
Yeah, I'm so glad that keeping it real gets to be one of the scenes in your Forrest Gump movie. This one.
You, I am grateful. Again, Forrest Gump, I just fell into this. You two are amazing. I think that the work you're doing, the change work that you are doing throughout the state of California, and hope, I don't know, beyond, I hope,
Yeah.
is amazing. And I am happy to talk with you on camera, off camera, anytime.
yeah,
I am also inspired by your work and by your curiosity, your constant curiosity. I love that. So thank you for this opportunity and this privilege. I really appreciate it.
our pleasure. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead, Carl. I'm just going to be also, I'm fangirling again. So go
she,
ahead.
she, she's all in her feels right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I just wanted to end with, you mentioned the idea of us and we. There's a Muhammad Ali. I don't know if this is true, but they say the shortest poem in recorded history is Muhammad Ali saying, "Me, we."
Yes,
And
yes.
so that I'm ready to go. I'm gonna go run a lap. I'm gonna go run a mile now and change the world. Julie, you're
I'm not.
amazing. I'm so glad.
I'm not going to go
I'm
run
so
a
glad
mile,
we got
but yeah, I might go sell some things at my yard sale. That's probably what I'm going to
you.
do next.
I will handle your business. And until next time, I'm Carl.
I'm Tiff, and that's
And
Julie.
that's Julie. And we're
Thank you
keeping it
so
real.
much. Take care.
Wasn't that fun?
Oh,